The liberal media is going hog wild over the Coke boat hoax, the cartel cruiser chock full of poison in the Caribbean Sea that our military smoked on September 2nd and then double-tapped as two alleged narco-terrorists clung to the wreckage. The Washington Post accused the Secretary of War of committing war crimes. Hegseth order on first Caribbean boat strike, officials say, kill them all. But that narrative getting lit up by the New York Times, who reported Hegseth ordered a lethal attack, but not the killing of survivors, officials say. The secretary was at Trump's cabinet meeting defending the strikes, saying he watched the first one, but then dipped out for meetings during the second.
We've only just begun striking narco boats and putting narco terrorists at the bottom of the ocean because they've been poisoning the American people.
And the drugs coming in through the sea by sea are down 91%. And I don't know who the 9% is.
I'm not sure either, sir.
But down 91% by sea.
We've had a bit of a pause because it's hard to find boats to strike right now, which is the entire point. Right? Deterrence has to matter, not arrest and hand over and then do it again.
So you didn't see any survivors, to be clear, after that first strike? You personally?
I did not personally see survivors, but I stand, because the thing was on fire. It was exploded and fire and smoke. You can't see anything. You got digital. This is called the fog of war.
One of the seditious six is piling on. Senator Mark Kelly says Pete is a toy soldier.
I am not going to be silenced by this president or the people around him. There needs to be an investigation. He runs around on a stage like he's a 12-year-old playing Army. And it is ridiculous. It is embarrassing.
But any new facts be damned. The media and the Democrats have made up their mind. Pete is a war criminal.
There is no lawyer that I'm aware of who indicates that that second strike is not a war crime.
That's a violation of international law.
That is considered a war crime if the facts that are being reported stand.
If the facts are, as have been alleged, that there was a second strike specifically to kill the survivors in the water, that's a stone-cold war crime. It's also murder.
It's flat-out murder, and anyone that acted on those orders could be held on war crimes.
All right, so Jessica, it takes two strikes to knock the boat down to the bottom of the ocean. How is that a war crime?
Well, it's a war crime, and we didn't play any Republicans, but there were plenty of them that have been talking about, like John Yoo, who was the architect of the Bush 9/11 response, was talking about this as well, that if there are people who are shipwrecked, which is what these two survivors were.
Survivors?
They survived the first strike.
Jessica. They're not survivors.
Okay.
They're victims.
You know,
go ahead, I'm sorry.
That's how the DOD manual says that you have to do it, that you have to take them, you should send a helicopter to get them out of there, and then you try them. Or international law also says that as well. You could play Roger Wicker talking about it, Senator Tom Tillis, Mike Turner. These are all Republicans saying it. So the narrative that this is about the left getting all hot and bothered about another hoax is absolutely ludicrous.
Can I just ask you one question?
No, you can't, actually. You already asked me a question. No, I insist
What
you stop.
happens if we hit a terrorist and the terrorist survives? We're supposed to send a helicopter to rescue him and then give him first aid?
We know that this isn't
Jessica,
a hoax
yes
because
or no?
the best case scenario is that Admiral Bradley, who they're trying to put all the blame on, is the one who authorized the second lethal strike that took out these people who, again, it was a violation of the law that they were killed. We also know that the U.S. doesn't always do this because there was another strike in the Caribbean back in September where a Colombian and an Ecuadorian person survived, and we repatriated them home. We didn't even take them to court here for the crimes that we knew that they'd committed. We sent them back to their home country. There is tons of reporting now. You want to call the Washington Post fake news, that's fine. The New York Times story, by the way, didn't exonerate them. We also have the Wall Street Journal saying that a DOD official says that Hegseth was the, quote, target engagement authority, so the guy in charge. We also know, writ large, that the story about this administration being focused on eradicating American society of drugs is absolute BS because Donald Trump went and pardoned. He's walking free now, the former Honduran president who trafficked 400 tons of cocaine into America. Why did he get to leave prison early? He had a 45-year sentence, which, by the way, Trump administration #1 prosecuted him because Roger Stone is his buddy and because he wrote Donald Trump a letter calling him Your Excellency and saying that they shared conservative values. The problem is the story is changing every 10 minutes. It went from fake news to the frog shooting narco terrorists to it is not changing at all.
Yeah,
actually, once you let me talk,
Jessica.
it's completely consistent.
Okay.
Now it's Admiral Bradley's fault, and I presume that he's getting lawyered up right now.
No. Prediction, nothing will come of this.
Yeah.
Kaylee?
What you just witnessed with Jessica's explanation here is Democrats in search of their next hoax, their next scandal. Let me break this down for you, because this
John
happens
Yoo,
all the time.
Democrat
and Trump
scandal
administration
monger.
won. No, he was referring to the fact the laws of war as if the Washington Post story was true. The Washington Post story is not true. Let me break it down, because we dealt with this in Trump administration 1. Buried down in the Washington Post story is the Department of Defense saying that the story is completely false. So you say, okay, what's the Washington Post going on? They say they talked to 7 people familiar with the situation. You're like, oh, whoa, 7 people agreed on this? That's huge. That's a lot of people. Oh, wait. Well, 2 people said there was a second strike. There was a second strike. We know that. You get down to brass tacks. They have one source. According to one source, the order was to kill everybody. One source. So on one source, the Washington Post runs with a story. Then you bring in the New York Times. The New York Times spoke to 5 people familiar with the matter. What did the 5 people say? Each official said Mr. Hegseth's directive did not specifically address what should happen if a first missile turned out not to fully accomplish all of the things. As the operation unfolded, they said Hegseth did not give any further orders to the effect of what the Washington Post said. So it's debunked by 5 sources at the New York Times. The Washington Post runs with one story, and then you have the Democrat, you have the left, you have Jessica swooping in saying, this is a big scandal, let's impeach, this is the anatomy of a hit job. We saw it all the time 4 years ago. You're just seeing it again.
Yeah, so if the target is out there, Greg, and you want to put it to the bottom of the ocean, and one missile doesn't do it, you have a second missile go in and sink the boat. What's the scandal?
Well, have you not thought about the ocean life? What that
The aquatic life
the
does
aquatic
need
life could be
saving.
harmed by that second strike. There's a couple of things. Number one, I do not believe anybody that is shouting right now actually cares about those people, okay? They didn't care about the gangs when they were here. They didn't care about the women being trafficked or the kids being attacked or the rapes, or they didn't care about the victims of recidivism. They didn't even care about the victims that we talked about for years, women being thrown in front of subway trains. They only care about victims when it becomes political expedient, when they see an election approaching. It doesn't, they don't know. Suddenly they're experts on war crimes. They all went on AI and went like, what's a war crime? Could this really happen? You know, I do not believe they care. I refuse to invest any amount of caring on those people on the boat, because they are terrorists. If you have not developed the hoax instinct after the last 10 years, and your reflex is still to say, wow, this sounds really bad, you need a reverse lobotomy. Let's compare a story that harms, say, the Trump administration versus one that harms the left. Okay, when a story suddenly erupts around Trump, it's taken as fully realized, structurally sound, a seasoned oak of facts. Meanwhile, the Minneapolis corruption scheme has been emerging for 3 years. We were screaming about the border for 4. We were talking about the trans issue. Nobody was listening. We were talking about real stories that didn't become real to Democrats until they lost an election. It's never about concerns for people. Oh, it's only political. This story was so flimsy. Even Mark Kelly was reluctant to say it was a crime because he knew what he was going to say was a matter of opinion in a gray area. From a common sense perspective, it'd be great to kill a terrorist while he's terrorizing. But what are the odds of that? He's either running to terrorize or running away from terrorizing. You're going to have to, maybe it's going to take 2 strikes. In bowling, they call it a spare. I'm okay with that. But the process of enacting terror still makes you a terrorist, still makes you worthy of death, especially if you're dealing with weapons of mass destruction, the way drugs are. Of course, they're going to say, but what if they were a fisherman? You could say the same thing about terrorists. What if those terrorists were fishermen? True, maybe they are terrorists. Maybe we made a mistake. But they're pretty confident that they aren't. So this sounds harsh. Killing terrorists at sea, I suppose. It doesn't sound harsh to me. But if it sounds harsh to you, Jessica, remember that this is what happens when the pendulum swings. We worry about what happens to a captured terrorist in your hands. Can we trust that they will be treated as a captured terrorist or as a Maryland dad, in which you suddenly import in a margarita mix for a little afternoon cocktail. We can't trust criminals in your hands. Our New York government released 7,000 criminals into the city. 7,000. We can't trust you with terrorists, so it's just better for us to kill them in the ocean, make them shark feed, be done with it. Merry Christmas.
I just used to watch these drone videos during the Obama administration. Remember Bombs Away, Barry? And he would show us the DOD, and one strike, boom, the caravan, you see all these guys scrambling. Then they come in, finish the job, rat-tat-tat, rat-tat-tat, clean up everybody. No one cared. They were terrorists.
Well, here's what I would say. First of all, in any bombshell story, the most important thing you can do is urge caution. Okay, so from our perspective, is to say, well, okay, let's get some more information. You have the instinct of like, that doesn't sound right. I'm not sure. Let's see. I don't know. But then you had these massive on-the-record denials that there was a second strike. There was a second strike. So then that's why it's not black and white. There are nuances here. It is, as Pete said today, it's fog of war situation. But I think the administration would benefit from the President of the United States giving a scripted speech about what are we doing there? What are we doing? Where are we going? What is the goal? Get us behind it. Help us help you get there. Because if you don't, it seems like it's just one thing after another where it's on the record. It's not on the record, but it is, but it's not. But now we're blaming this guy. And you know what we haven't talked about? Now it's Tuesday. President Trump wanted to be called the affordability president on Sunday. Nobody's talking about that, not Monday and not Tuesday. And we've got big problems ahead for the midterms for the Republicans if they don't have an opportunity to focus and to do some things that are just smart, like the normal blocking and tackling of the media. For as annoying as they are, it still will save you time in the long run so you can push the agenda that you want.
Thank you very much, Dana.
Thank you.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.